So I like to think that I lucked out pretty good when it comes to the type of music my parents listened to when I was a child. I grew up listening to a variety of different classic rock artists throughout the years, and today I'd like to share with you 12 of my favorite albums from my childhood that my parents listened to on repeat while I grew up. Before we get there though, a little bit of context on what you're watching here. I am currently on break during a 16-hour shift at my job as an in-home caregiver using the treadmill in the basement. I promised my viewers back at home that I would post every single day here on YouTube, and I also promised myself that also. Partially as an experiment to kind of track my progress as a content creator, but also because I have a lot of different things on my mind, a lot of different things I'd like to share with the world, and for better or for worse, you're watching me and I'm talking to you right now, so let's get moving forward, shall we? Now, it's something to keep in mind about this list. This is in no particular order. I love all these albums, or at least parts of them, if not the whole entire album. I certainly have a bunch of memories attached to these albums as well. Now, I may not be listening to these albums regularly nowadays. It's because I've heard them so many times that I got them memorized. They're pretty much a part of my bloodstream at this point. And they're things that you can't really take out of me because I've heard it so many times it's imprinted on my very soul. So here we go, 12 albums in no particular order that are reminiscent of my childhood and bring me sweet, sweet feelings and nostalgia. The first album I'd like to bring up is Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. I've heard this album thousands, if not tens of thousands of times in my lifetime, and I still enjoy it to this day. Every single track is beautiful, every single track is a masterpiece, and I have to say I think my favorite one nowadays, in retrospect, is Any Color You Like. But a lot of these songs bleed in and out of each other throughout the album. Truly a timeless classic, never goes out of style, it's got something for everyone. I think everyone can appreciate this album. And I even suspect that people who do not like Pink Floyd, or even say they don't like this album, they can probably find themselves nodding their head to it melodically if it's playing somewhere in the background. It's a very agreeable album. The second album I'd like to bring up is Days of the Future Past by the Moody Blues. I have some really good memories of this album. Driving up north to my family's cabin while this album is playing and just dazing in and out of consciousness. Tuesday afternoon, Nights in White Satin. It's some really, really beautiful music, very soothing to the soul, so to speak. And I won't lie either, that album made me want to become a flute player at one point. A fun fact about Ray Thomas, the flute player for Moody Blues, was that throughout his life he became progressively more and more deaf. And at one point he was completely deaf, but still had the capacity to perform live because he could feel the music, the vibrations in his very being from being on stage. Pretty cool stuff. Cold halted orb that rules the night, removes the colors from our sight. Red is gray and yellow white, but we decide which is right and which is an illusion. That's a poem that Ray Thomas recites in one of the songs on this album. It's a solid album, give it a listen to if you haven't already. The third album on the list is Band on the Run by Paul McCartney. I remember going to Camp Agawam as a child. That was the camp that I went to occasionally in Cub Scouts. And we'd ride my mom's minivan with my brothers and sometimes other people in our pack. And for some reason, this was one of the albums that never left the cassette player. Yeah, I said cassette player. It was one of those old vans from the 90s. If the list of albums I'm talking about here today was not limited to classic rock, I'd even put in Dr. Demento's 20th anniversary album. Because for some reason, that one was also pretty much always inside of the cassette player when we were in Cub Scouts. I don't know why, but that's what we listened to. Like a lot of it. But Band on the Run by Paul McCartney was a wonderful album. I remember 1985, Helen Wheels, Let Me Roll It. Of course, the song Band on the Run itself was really, really good. But the whole entire album, played from beginning to end, was a very, very solid album for me, and I still enjoy playing it from time to time, especially when I'm out and about cleaning up my house at home. It's some good comfort music for me. It's something that reminds me of the good old days. The fourth one on this list is Hot Rocks by the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, even if it is some brown sugar. This was another one of those albums that existed on cassette tape in the van growing up as a child that always was recirculating with the other ones that were in the same pile. While we didn't listen to this one as much going to Camp Agawam as kids, we certainly did listen to it quite a bit. The fifth one on the list is The Doors' self-titled album, their first album. It's an understatement to say, what an amazing band, what an amazing album. How many bands out there can replace the whole concept of a four-piece band with an organ player and make it work and rock out as well as they did? Didn't think so. Break On Through, 20th Century Fox, Crystal Ship, Light My Fire. had some really good solid hits on it, and the whole album flows into itself beautifully, almost perfectly. There's probably a reason for that. They were very talented musicians after all, and Jim Morrison was one heck of a visionary. Number 6 was Purple Rain by Prince and the Revolution. While this one wasn't in the rotation as often as a lot of the other ones that were in rotation quite a bit, this one will forever hold a place in my heart because of just how much it made me feel ways about stuff at such a young age. It wasn't until like late elementary school I remember wearing a Prince shirt to school and being made fun of by other kids that were a little more alpha and macho. Well, they'd call me names that would demean my masculinity because I liked someone as effeminate as Prince. But now I don't care. I like Prince. What? Number 7 was She's So Unusual by Cyndi Lauper. Cyndi Lauper, steal my heart, why don't you? Pulling on my heartstrings. What an amazing musician. Just an inspiration. An amazing consummate performer on stage, full of liveliness and energy when she's performing. And I dare say that her music and her lyrics is quite timeless, and I still enjoy it to this very day. Now, not all of her music is accessible or pop-friendly as our hits that we're all very much familiar with. But to me, that album is solid, the whole thing. I love it very much. Number 8 is Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy by The Who. This was a wonderful compilation of The Who's more outstanding hits over the years, and I remember listening to Boris the Spider for the first time ever, which I don't think ever really topped the charts, so to speak, but it was a pretty entertaining song when you're a kid and your dad's driving you around the neighborhood and he's singing it in that baritone voice, Boris the Spider. But that album featured The Kids Are Alright, I Can't Explain, Substitute, I Can See for Miles, Pinball Wizard, My Generation, Magic Bus. Solid album. So many really, really good tunes on that. It was lacking Baba O'Reilly and maybe Love Reign Over Me. But hey, when you're The Who and you have that many hits, how can you possibly put it on one concise compilation album? You just can't. Too many really good hits, not enough space on one vinyl disc. Number 9 is an album by Yes called Classic Yes. It's very much progressive rock-driven style of music. And the lyrics don't start until the second track, which I believe is called Wondrous Stories, if my memory serves me properly. But the whole album is pretty solid and good listening. Now, once again, this is coming from the perspective of someone who was raised on all these albums and have lots of nostalgic value and just personal memories associated with all these albums. You might not even like classic music, and if you don't, why are you even watching this video? Keep watching my video, please. Watch it all the way to the end. I promise. You may like it. Anyways, album number 10 is Abbey Road by the Beatles. This album's good for many reasons, and I don't really have to list them because if you know, you know, and if you don't know, then you probably should just listen to it and find out for yourself what makes this album so wonderful. I remember my high school teacher telling me about this Paul McCartney look-alike contest and how Paul McCartney was rumored to have passed away before he turned 28, and he's forever 27. And that this album cover was proof that the Beatles were trying to communicate to their fans that the real Paul McCartney was indeed dead, and that this was a Paul McCartney look-alike posing as Paul McCartney. You can take a look at the license plate. It says 28 if. Ooh, is the hair in the back of your neck standing up? Is Paul really dead? We don't know. On the album cover, it's rumored, of course, that John Lennon was supposed to be representing God, or the angelic one, in the front of the line, walking across Abbey Road. The second one in line was Ringo Starr, and he was supposed to be representing the minister, or the one who was reading the last rites for Paul McCartney, or the dead man, who is walking barefoot across the street while smoking a cigarette. And of course, as we know, cigarettes are a symbol of death, and you would get buried without your shoes on back in the day as per tradition. I don't know. I'm just going off what was told to me by my teacher. And then the last person in line was, of course, George Harrison, who represents the gravedigger. I mean, if you're interested in conspiracy theories, that's a pretty interesting one right there. I really don't think that it happened personally, but you never know, right? I mean, history is what's told to us. It's what's written by the people who are in power and who have a sway on things. You just don't know, folks. We just don't know. Is Paul dead? Revolution number 9. If you don't know what I mean by Revolution number 9, you might want to check out the Beatles' White Album and play that song backwards. Okay, enough conspiracy theories for now. The next album I'd like to talk about is Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. Houses of the Holy, Trampled Underfoot, Kashmir, and all of the other songs on the album are absolutely solid. If you like Led Zeppelin, I'm willing to bet that you probably like a majority of their songs, if not all of them. And I know I don't necessarily fall in that category myself. There's some Led Zeppelin songs I just don't care for that have been overplayed for me or were just never really that good to begin with. But one thing you can't deny is how much influence Led Zeppelin has played over modern day musicians. The same could be said with the Rolling Stones and the Doors and the Beatles, of course, and the Who, and Pink Floyd. The list goes on and on. We all get our influences from somewhere, right? Anyways, Physical Graffiti was a wonderful album highlighting a very, very important part of Led Zeppelin's career, because how timeless is the song Kashmir? You can't not know what Kashmir is when you first hear that. It's Led Zeppelin. And last but not least on my list is Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John. Both my parents like listening to this album quite a bit, but more so my mother, I feel. Elton John wrote a lot of hits, and he wrote a lot of music, and he wrote a lot of really good music, and he even wrote a good amount of music that I just didn't care for also. Kind of like Led Zeppelin for me. He had a lot of hits that were really good and a lot of other songs that just were not that great to me, personally. But this album, overall, I feel as far as Elton John goes, the whole thing was very, very easy to listen to and enjoyable, and will forever hold a place in my heart and give me fond memories of my childhood growing up in the 80s and 90s. Well, that's a wrap, folks. We had Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. We had Days of the Future Past by Moody Blues. We had Band on the Run by Paul McCartney. We had Hot Rocks by the Rolling Stones. We had The Doors' self-titled album. We had Purple Rain by Prince and the Revolution. She's So Unusual by Cyndi Lauper. Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy by The Who. Classic Yes by Yes. Abbey Road by the Beatles. Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. And Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John. Music was most certainly my first passion as a young man growing up, before I even discovered the circus and flow arts. And if you're new to my channel, by the way, I'd like to tell you that I post a lot here on YouTube. I post every single day, in fact, as you might have heard me say earlier. And once a week, I like to post videos that teach you new circus and flow art skills, such as juggling, juggling clubs, contact juggling, like those crystal balls that David Bowie used in the Labyrinth, spinning things on your finger. We call that pediddling. It's a fun and interesting word that refers to spinning objects on the tip of your finger, usually flat objects like books or ring binders and stuff. Or we can also teach you how to do devil sticks. Now, all these tutorials that I put out on my channel are meant for the absolute beginner level, so if it's something you're thinking about doing but don't know where to start, please check out my playlist section and click on Circus and Flow Arts Tutorials to know more about how to learn and how to get started. Alright folks, that's a wrap. I've talked your ear off long enough. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching this to the end. I appreciate it very much. And please remember, folks out there, to never give up, do your best, stay true to you, and be amazing, folks. Thanks very much and good night. See you next time.